Hey guys, this is Ben Machardi coming to you live from rotocurve.com. It is July 4th today, and I am bringing you the late slate of games and the breakdown that we have for the hitters. First guy I'm going to talk about today is Alex Wood. Alex Wood has a higher average to right-handed bats. Doesn't give up a ton of home runs, but there are a couple guys on that Phillies team I think you should be interested in. The two guys who I think you should really look at are Cesar Hernandez, who's been hitting in the 2-hole, and Maikel Franco, who's the 3 batter. Hernandez has been stealing a lot of bases, getting on base a lot, getting a couple hits. He's been the place setter for that Phillies offense lately, and it's somebody who I definitely think is in play. Franco hitting behind him has been the guy that's been driving him in, and those two guys, now that they've been put up in the top of the order, have really been causing some problems for opposing pitchers. Both guys are right-handed, going up against a left-handed pitcher, Wood. Wood doesn't give up a lot of home runs, as we said, but he does have a high average to right-handed bats. So I think both of these guys are in play for a couple hits and could have a good day today. Next guy I want to talk about is David Hale from Colorado. He's going up against Arizona. He has allowed left-handed bats to hit .307 against him with 7 home runs and 21 innings pitched and a whip of 1.43 this year. Some of the guys I think you might want to consider, guys like Goldie hit well against right-handed pitching. He has a .344 batting average with 15 home runs and 221 at-bats. On base plus slugging percentage of 1.091 on the season. So Goldie is definitely somebody who's going to be in play. He's basically in play anytime they're going up against a weak pitcher. The other guy who you can look at is Yasmani Tomas. He has a .320 batting average so far against right-handed pitching. So he's another guy who's been hitting the ball. He's hitting behind Goldie in that lineup and has good lineup placement and has been driving in a lot of runs. Other guys that could be in play, A.J. Pollock, David Peralta, Jake Lamb, basically the usual suspects up there for the top of the Arizona order. Most people don't realize that Arizona park is yielding about as many runs as anywhere else in the league right now. So all those guys are in play, especially against the weak pitcher. Next game up is Cincinnati versus Milwaukee. Talk a little bit about Josh Smith. He's a rookie making his second start today. Left-handed bats have been the way to get at him. On the Brewers, that really points out to 2 guys, maybe 3. The first guy is Gerardo Parra, .308 batting average and 24 extra base hits already this year. He doesn't really have a ton of home run power, although he has some home runs, and he did hit one yesterday. But he's a guy that hits a lot of balls into the gaps, gets a lot of doubles, and has been leading off from Milwaukee lately. The guy who's been doing a lot of the damage driving runs in has been Adam Lind. He's got a .302 batting average with 12 home runs and about 210 at-bats so far this season. So he's another guy who I think is in a really good spot today. So I think you can look at both of those guys. Depending on where Scooter Gannett is in the order, he's another guy that you could probably put in play. I'm hoping that they put him back up into the 2-hole, but if he's hitting in the 8-hole, I still like him, but I don't like him anywhere near as much as I do if he's hitting second. Next guy is Josh Colementher. Colementher's been giving up a .300 batting average to both sides of the plate this year, and he's been giving up a lot of home runs, and he gives them up to righties, he gives them up to lefties, he doesn't discriminate. So any of those power hitters you might want to look at on the Colorado team today. The guy who's been on fire, though, has been Charlie Blackmon. Has a .308 batting average, 10 home runs, and 224 at-bats against right-handed pitching. Started the game off with another home run last night. He's got about a dozen stolen bases. So there's a lot of ways that this guy can get you fantasy points. He's definitely somebody who is on my radar, another one of those guys to look at. If you're looking for a cheap catcher option, too, Nick Hundley has been hitting really well. He's got a .321 batting average against right-handed pitching. So he's somebody that you can look at, too, if you're trying to get a salary saver in there. Next guy is Mike Pelfrey. Pelfrey's actually been pretty good this year. He's not somebody who I think you should really be targeting against. He's been pretty good, and that Kansas City offense has really been struggling. The one guy numbers-wise that does stand out, though, is Mike Moustakas. He's a left-handed batter, hitting .339 versus right-handed pitching so far this year. So I definitely think he's one guy that could be in play. Most likely, he'll be batting second up towards the top of that order. And again, .339 against right-handed pitching is a pretty good clip for him. So I wouldn't mind using Moustakas. His price is a little bit lower on some of these sites, definitely compared to some of the big guys at third base. And, you know, he's been producing, so he's somebody I think that you can keep in play. Joe Blanton is on the other side of that game. He's going up against Minnesota. Now, he had that great game when he started, came back last game and wound up with a negative score on DraftKings. I think he might have even had a negative score on FanDuel as well. I mean, don't get fooled. Joe Blanton is not a good pitcher. The only reason you would use a guy like this is because his price is so cheap that he doesn't need to do a lot to pay it off. But he's not somebody who's probably ever going to match that 30-point game he had his first start back out. I think that he's somebody you can target against. The only problem is there aren't a lot of guys that make sense to use. Blanton's a guy you would probably want left-handed power against, and there really is no left-handed power on the Twins. You got a guy like Eddie Rosario, who we mentioned yesterday, had a pretty decent game. He's hitting about 277 right now he's in 277 against right-handed pitching. Couple home runs and about 125 at-bats. Again, you could look at a guy like Mauer. Torrey Hunter has about a 285 batting average against right-handed pitching. So all those guys are in play, but there isn't really anybody who profiles as somebody that you have to have in your lineup against a guy like Blanton. All I'll say is that Blanton is a weak pitcher. You can definitely target guys against them, but there's nobody who fits the profile of a guy who Blanton should struggle with or somebody who should light Blanton up. The next guy I want to talk about is Hector Santiago. Now, Hector Santiago has been pretty good this year. His batting average to right-handed and left-handed bats is pretty low, but the one thing that he does is give up a lot of home runs to left-handed bats. To right-handed bats, I'm sorry. He's given up 12 home runs already this year to right-handed bats, and that's really been the only way that anybody's been scoring on him. The problem that I have is they're playing Texas today. Texas doesn't have any big right-handed bats. You're basically looking at probably Adrian Beltre maybe as the biggest right-handed bat that they'll be able to throw out there. And remember, Beltre's coming off the disabled list. He's not 100% yet. But Santiago has been tough on those lefties. So guys like Fielder, guys like Moreland, those guys are not in great spots here today. Beltre would be the one guy that is, but he's only hitting about 260 on the season. So I think Santiago could be a guy that, somebody that you want to target today. I think he's a sneaky good play. I don't think there's a lot of guys that you can really use against him that make a lot of sense. So Santiago, like I said, he's probably a guy that I would be looking to target as a pitcher in my lineups more than I'd be looking to target against him today. Kevin Correa is the next guy. Left-handed batters are hitting 333 against him with 3 home runs and 10 innings pitched. It's a small sample size. He hasn't been up in the majors for much this year. But again, Atlanta doesn't really have anybody right now that I really want to target against them. Markakis is probably the best guy. He's got about a 315 batting average against right-handed pitching, but he has no power. You can probably look at a guy like Perzinski if he's in the game. He's got a little bit of power from the left-hand side, maybe a Jace Peterson going up against Correa. He's another lefty. There's a lot of lefties in that Atlanta lineup, but nobody that really scares me. Again, like I said, Peterson, Markakis, probably my 2 favorite plays in that game. Both of those guys have pretty high averages against right-handed pitching, but neither one of them really has a lot of home run power. So I don't know what kind of upside you're going to get out of them, but they should both be in good spots to get a couple hits. Next guy I want to look at is Cozart from Miami. Right-handed batters have a higher average and more power against them. But something interesting in this game, the run line in this game is only 5. So I'm guessing that the wind is blowing in over at Wrigley Field, but I got to double check on that later on. I'm hoping that wasn't a typo when I looked at it. I haven't seen a run line of 5 all season right now. So if they're only expecting 5 runs here, I think you got to reconsider some of the pitching in this game, and I wouldn't have any of the bats in this game. Cozart to me was somebody that I looked at and I actually have on my short list of pitchers. Like I said, 5 runs seems a little peculiar to me. So this is a night game. So wait until later on today. See if you can figure out why it's only 5 runs. But if it's 5 runs, I think you got to stay away from all the bats in this game, and it probably puts some of those pitchers in play. So just keep that in mind for later on. A couple more pitchers I want to mention. You got Wandy Rodriguez. Right-handed bats are doing much better against him. This year, he's actually been pretty good. Last year, he gave up over a 300 average with 20 home runs to right-handed bats. So against a team like the Angels, you got to think that puts guys like Mike Trout, who's hitting 328 against lefties with 5 home runs and 64 at-bats into play. Also, a guy like Eric Ibar. Ibar had a couple big hits last night. He had a pretty good game. He's batting averages up to 299 against left-handed bats right now. So he's somebody else I think you can consider. Pujols, for you guys who know, Pujols is actually a little bit more of a reverse splits kind of hitter. So he does better against right-handed bats, but obviously the way he's been hitting and the power that he has, he's somebody else that you can consider, but not one of my favorite plays out of this game to target. The last guy I want to talk about is Jimmy Nelson. Nelson has allowed a 308 batting average with 7 home runs and a 1.76 whip so far this year to left-handed bats. He's going up against Cincinnati today. The only guy who really stands out to me is Joey Votto. Jay Bruce is another guy that I like a little bit, but Bruce is pretty feast or famine. He does strike out a lot. And against a high strikeout pitcher like Nelson, I don't think he's going to be the best play. Votto, though, is a 277 batting average this year with 12 home runs and 195 at-bats. So he's probably the guy I think you should be looking to target against a pitcher like Nelson. So that basically breaks it down for our night slate today. Thank you guys for joining us over here at rotocurve.com. Be safe tonight. Enjoy your 4th of July. Enjoy the fireworks. And as always, stay classy, DFS.